Hernandez and 2 others swindled the money from the Mystic resident. Hundreds of protesters were at the state capitol yesterday to encourage lawmakers not to extend Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont's executive powers. Last week, the governor sent a 5-page letter to legislative leaders requesting his emergency powers be extended another 2 months to September 30th. This would be the 5th time Lamont's pandemic emergency executive powers could be extended. It's been nearly 2 weeks since Connecticut became the 19th state to legalize recreational cannabis, and now colleges and universities are looking to launch new programs and classes that will have a focus on the emerging market. The University of Connecticut and Eastern Connecticut State University are 2 of the schools introducing new programs. The schools will be teaching its first hemp cultivation classes this fall. It will be a minor to start, with plans to expand to something that students can choose as a major in the future. Firefighters made quick work of a fire that broke out inside a Hopkinton home early Sunday morning. It took firefighters less than 10 minutes to knock down the fire, which broke out inside a home on Main Street. Firefighters were also able to rescue a dog from the home. The family who lives there has been displaced, and the Red Cross is assisting them at this time.
The managing director of Paragon Trust Company and tax and private client practitioner joins us to bring a common sense approach to money in a world of total insanity. Let's welcome Tony D'Angelo.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we are back. I told you before the break that I'd have a half a gallon of coffee. My brain was a bit in a fog to open up the show, but I think we're rocking and rolling ready. Our good pal, Tony D'Angelo, who joins us each and every Tuesday to, again, as I say, doggedly, in a good way, chase after the governor. And again, he's on with us today. Tony, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Lee Elci, and proud to be among you.
So the fish rots from the head down. Are you trying to tell me that the governor is
and actually, I've been on this kick, and the kids know it, about SAT words and things like that. Maybe it's like early senility or something, but I'm going to deal with a concept today known as pithy aphorisms. I think, and I just want to say this, we're going to test your coffee this morning, Lee Elci. Dan had the call of the week last week, I thought, when he said, what's happening here? What the heck is happening in government? Why can't we just have simple things like, low crime, low taxes, personal safety? And that was a very difficult question for me to answer, because it's just so much stuff going back and forth. And then when I thought about it, the answer was really simple, and it kind of boils down into this thing of a pithy aphorism. Now, what is that? I'm going back to high school. These are brief statements of principles, and I was reading this one, and this is for the real trivia files out there. Sir James Porter's observations on the religion, law, and government and manners of the Turks, written in 1768. The Turks had a saying, and they said that the fish first stinks at the head, meaning that if the servant is out of control, or if the situation with the servants is out of control, you look at the master. Now, a couple of other things in history that you look at, or just in culture. The old Baptist preachers would often say, what you have in the pulpit, you have in the pew. The Jews were famous for saying, or the Hebrews, the old Hebrew proverb, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And think about this, being a sports fan, being a professional athlete, you'll never see a great team without, great leadership. Maybe they're not the finest people in the world, but they know how to run a ball club. And it also works in inverse proportion. So when you look at the situation that we see here in Connecticut, the rotten economy, the control, the complaint, the executive orders, on and on and on and on, just the total disregard for personal safety. And people look where their eyes are saying. I challenge us today, let's look from the top on down, and we're going to see a lot of difficulties from there. So when I began to think about that, when you start from the top and you bring it down, it's like, why do we have the problems that we have? And, I was a Pogo reader. Pogo was a comic strip like in the 60s and 70s, and Pogo was a little backwoods character, and he'd always say, we've met the enemy, and he is us. Your ball, my friend.
Well, I just, as you were saying that, it reminded me that Dukakis actually going after, I believe it was Reagan, said the same thing to him back in the day, although I guess sometimes that can be used, firing warning shots across the bow, maybe to anybody. But I think it's funny that's been used a number of different times. But it's apt here, I think, as far as Lamont goes, because as you've been going after him for the longest time, clearly there's something going on in Hartford.
Well, and we keep doing the same thing, and like you had mentioned in your most excellent monologue, there wasn't one mention yesterday of this fraud. And why do we keep doing the same thing in Connecticut and expecting a different result? It's another pithy aphorism, Ross Perot. But I guess, but if you're going to start cleaning something up, why isn't somebody talking about the big kahuna here? And here's a little scorecard. This is what we've done in, I don't know, maybe a year and a half. We've talked about money laundering Ned, self-dealing Ned, identity stealing Ned, racketeering Ned, loan sharking Ned, securities fraud Ned, and, we've gone through the whole thing with the drunken legislature and all that.
Right.
And, we're expecting a different result. Now, I'm going to just give you something today, and you think if I'm just running off at the mouth, you're welcome to do that. I personally am tired of this guy hurting little people. If you're in the political system, you're actually tolerating this because this is what's going to happen. And I'm tired of him using the state as his piggy bank. Now, today we're going to look at Ned Coin Ned and Kickback Ned. Okay, we're going to give him another couple of names.
Right.
I get a lot of requests, and it's just the thing is, and people say, can you make it simpler? It's so complicated. Yeah, I understand that, but people have asked me what Peasers means and what's happening with Peasers and how does this whole thing kind of play into what's happening in employees' retirement system. And you had chronicled this, Lee, in your article in the day. In December of 2020, the Oak HCFT hedge fund, which is the governor's wife, had pitched Peasers for an investment. They had stated to Peasers a 21% return. During a time when the pros are, the Dow Jones average was at 2%, the S&P's at 3%, these guys somehow are doing 21%. Now, one of two things is happening here. This is either a Ponzi'd up fraud, or it is the governor's sworn duty to get every single person in the state on his investments, because if this is the case, our worries are over. Now, thuggery follows a timeline. January they met, and there was a lot of push me, pull you, and then they went off into executive session at Peasers, and they said, we're going to invest. March 4th, 2021, Unite Us Pennsylvania, remember Unite Us from last week, begins just magically. So here it is that the people of Pennsylvania are now propping up their pension system. And it's like, this looks a little worrisome to me. Well, the FBI and the federal grand jury thought the same thing, because on March 26, 2001, Peasers announced they're after us, they're probing us. Now, this is where it starts to hit home, and this is the whole thing about the fish rotting from the head down and, not paying attention to what you need to pay attention to. On June 17, 2021, Connecticut buys into Securus Technology for the taxpayer-paid phone calls. And you say to yourself, because a lot of these political figures walk around, where is a local vendor? Well, it's very simple. Securus Technologies is a major player in Peasers. So you have this series here of multiple kickbacks. You have one kick out into Unite Us Pennsylvania. Then you have another where effectively the taxpayers of Connecticut are subsidizing these calls so that the governor and his family can prop up their equities and get their equities out ostensibly to the Cayman Islands. And and here's another thing. I mean, as a citizen, as one who, reports to these fine people every single week, I can't find this contract. I've asked people. Nobody knows where it is. You go to the CT contracting portal, which by and large is a joke. Does anybody see? How long is this contract for, Lee Elci? Is it for 10 years, 15 years? I'll tell you this much. It's for the duration that the Lamonts need to get the ship out of the harbor. That's certain. So when you see all of this, and when it comes down to somebody's car being stolen, this is a culture. This is really a culture, and I'm getting very tired of it.
So I have a message from one of our listeners' social media post sent my way, actually email sent my way, saying, he gets up, this gentleman, Len, gets up every morning early to listen, in particular Tuesday to listen to you. break some of this stuff down. And he's punching his steering wheel right now, saying, what about an investigation? How do they go about getting an investigation on this stuff? Because you've thrown this stuff out there now for probably close to a year, right? So that's probably when you started.
I think about a year and a half.
Yeah. So we've had a couple of legislators kind of circle the drain, talk about it a little bit. In fact, I remember. This has got to be looked at.
I think it just comes from an act of boldness. Now, again, it's the kind of thing that this is really complicated stuff. I mean, I may be a dumb person, but on the scale of things, I try to apply myself. It's taken me this long, hours and hours and hours and hours, to come to what's here. And I say this to any person who is in leadership or politics that's like, hey, I've got to see this. I've got to understand it. Come here, I'll spend an hour with you. I mean, you'll walk out of here with your head spinning, frankly. I mean, if it's a case of like, I really don't get it, but I know something's wrong, I think, and I think I can show you. And the other thing is that, how could I put it? It's not like you have to do a lot of work. The work is done. Right. It's like you don't have to build the mousetrap. The mousetrap's there, the wheel's there. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, and the sad thing is, little people get hurt. People get their cars stolen. Schools are a mess, and it all comes down to the fish rots from the head down.
Tony D, is always great stuff. Folks need to follow you on Twitter because you're constantly posting stuff. You become this Twitter magician, man, whatever you want to call it. Really good stuff. But where do they go to follow you?
Tony D'Angelo 7 at Twitter.
There you go. Tony, I'll talk to you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, pal.
All right, pal. Tony D, who joins us each and every, every Tuesday to chat about different things. All right, listen, we have a great